friends. Welcome back to Eat, Read, Sleep, where we get together to vibe with books. We get together to summarize books for you to save you time and have discussions to elevate our minds. My name is Kalina.
And I'm Tapas.
And if you need any nonfiction book summary, head on over to our YouTube channel, Eat, Read, Sleep, KT.
And make sure you check out our latest book summary, The 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty. It's awesome.
And speaking of, so on today's episode of Drinks and Discussion, not only are we going to be talking about this book, but we have on with us today a very special guest. She was head and PR of Success Magazine. Now she runs the Front Porch Collective, a revolutionary space for publishing and book launches. She's a publicist for many best-selling authors, and she also is helping to represent today's book. So welcome on the show to Paige Dungan. Welcome, Paige.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Cheers. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. I love you guys and what you are doing for nonfiction authors and for just bringing such a light and awareness back to some books that can really change people's lives.
Yeah, this was like, our podcast was something that we just started ourselves. We just were talking to each other about about nonfiction books just because we really need it in our lives. And then we're like, why don't we bring our conversations out to share with everyone? And this is how Eat, Read, Sleep got started.
Oh, that's amazing. And this book especially has been such like a wildfire of a ride since its launch. So,
before we get into that though, Paige, I know I did briefly introduce you, but I'm sure our audience would love to hear from yourself. Like, can you tell us a little bit about you, and then kind of like, what is this magical work that you do in the book world?
Absolutely. So what I like to call myself is a human connector. So as a publicist, it is my job really to find my clients the right spaces to share and amplify their message. So as you mentioned, I was head of PR and talent at Success Magazine, where I get to work with some amazing individuals like Mel Robbins, Marie Forleo, Jay Shetty was on our cover, and really help see them catapult into kind of the thought leaders we are today. And so about 2 years ago, I decided to put on my entrepreneurial hat, and I founded the Front Porch Collective so I could really hone in on focusing solely on authors and their book launch campaigns. So many authors are brilliant geniuses, but when it comes to marketing and getting awareness for the book, they don't know where to go. And so I found this lack of knowledge and resource in the industry and really wanted to provide that from anyone who wanted to be a best-selling author to someone who wants to use it to grow their speaking business. Whatever kind of their book goal is, we support.
Love that. And what about you? Anything about you personally that we should know about?
Okay, so I'm so thrilled. My favorite series, first of all, growing up was the Boxcar Children, and it's coming back. So they are bringing the series back. I love books. I love people. Like, you will probably have to tell me, like, we're stopping multiple times today. And truly, I just am someone who loves to travel, and I'm a mom, and, trying to juggle all the hats like so many of us are trying to do like in a given day and somehow keep my sanity.
Well, we're honored and thrilled to have you on with us here today. Thank you so much for your time.
So before we dig into the book, I do want to make sure we have our drinks part set. So we'll start. So I actually set up us with a mango lassi. It is spiked with tequila. So
yes, pass that through the video, please. I will take that. And I have to share, guys, I am the kind of dad drinking water. I'm going to Colorado, so I need to hydrate. Coming from Dallas, it's no joke.
That's a great. We also have our waters here. So.
See, you're balancing it out. I love it.
It's all about balance.
It's all about, right? Balance. Okay, so guys, let's talk about the 8 Rules of Love. I was so excited when Jay announced this book last year. Like, I'm a huge fan of Think Like a Monk and of Jay Shetty in general overall. And so when this came out, I was just like, we have to get this. And then it was like the universe aligned. I got the message from you and you're like, I want to drink and discuss with you guys. I was like, yes, let's do it. And then when you sent me your list of authors, it was just like, wow, we have to do this one.
Yes. So this book, I was with you, like Think Like a Monk, completely changed so many of our understanding of ourselves and kind of that want in life and kind of that path of where we're going. And what I love about Jay's second book is he really now delves into the relationship part, right? Like he touches on so many elements from Think Like a Monk, but it is just such an amazing deep dive into kind of the next evolution of our journeys as humans.
How would you summarize this book in your words?
Okay, so if I have to summarize it, this book is anyone that wants to become confident and invigorated with themselves and their relationships. I know when I first saw the title, 8 Rules of Love, sometimes we are like, ooh, I'm already in love. What do I need this for? Or, ooh, I don't like love. That kind of turns me off. But it's so much deeper than love. It's truly at the core understanding kind of your goal and journey in this world. And love is ultimately a part of that.
Yeah, I agree with Paige. I think like when you first told me we're going to review this book, I was like, I don't want to read a book about love. Like we already, I read that kind of stuff, right? Then like reading it and reading the first chapter, I was like, okay, we're on to something here, because it's not just about like relationship and love. It's also about self-love and also about self-improvement. It's like a good continuation off of Think Like a Monk. Like you said, I think it's a good way to transition to this book, because you do kind of build on the self-love you develop and bringing out more into relationships in general, not just with your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend. It's in general. I think with your friends, you can apply this book as well.
Yeah, I think also this book is very great in changing the whole definition of what we know love is, right? Immediately, love, we think romantic relationship or rom-com or Disney happily ever after, but he talks about the different types of love that you can have and that you should have beyond just the romantic type, with yourself and with those around you, and ultimately with the world. So it's a book for everyone.
Yeah.
It is. And what I think I like so well about the layout is because you can truly open it to different sections of the book as well. It has this beautiful journey from front cover to back, but it also has a wonderfully placed themes within the book. So if you're struggling with your partner at that time, you can go to that section specifically and refresh there. Or if a relationship needs to change, hop to that section. So I really appreciate when a book is also laid out as a tool that's easy to access.
Yeah. Have you used anything in this book recently, or is there anything that you like go back to?
There is. It's funny because the chapter that hit closest for me is Your Partner is Your Guru. And I go back to that each and every time because I never looked at my husband in that way. And when he was talking about what truly a guru is and what they actually stand for and how to look in your partner in that, it actually has completely shifted my relationship and my husband and seeing how he is serving me. And I go back to that statement almost daily in our communication.
I love that. We were actually talking about that earlier. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I think, because you do learn a lot from your partner. I think as I read the chapter and I was going through and I was thinking about with my wife, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm learning from her now, because it's giving me a different scope on things. Before, I was just more like, here's what I think she's saying, or here's what I think that she's trying to get at, versus actually like realizing that she's teaching me what she wants to hear, how she wants me to react to her. I think that was really important for me to see, because I don't think I did that before. Definitely not before.
Yeah, I like how he specified the 3 parts of learning through your partner, right? You learn them, you learn from them, and then you learn through them. And I think through someone was the one that I really took away from that. It's because it's the hardest one. It's taking what they have for face value, and it might difficult, but you have to reflect on that on yourself as well, and think, what can I learn from this, even though it's so hard? They're not necessarily actively teaching you, but you're learning from this situation.
Absolutely. And I think when you have that at the core, and that's kind of a theme, right? He has within his whole book, what can you learn from the situation? When he's talking about arguments, and then he's talking about this chapter, it's if you can be in the mindset of learning rather than reacting, it completely lets you step into a different understanding than just kind of that anger and defensiveness that can come.
Yes. So you brought up the argument part. Can we?
Oh, yes.
Because I'm going to be.
Oh my gosh.
here and say I had never looked at arguments that way before. Because for me, the only answer is if you're arguing with your spouse, there's one winner and one loser, right? Like I couldn't even fathom that there could be two winners, right?
Yeah.
So just for our audience to kind of tee this up a little bit is that Jay tells us that when you're fighting with your partner, it's actually a good thing. You should fight with your partner. But you should fight on the same team.
Yeah. So like there is the issue at hand, right? So let's say it's a matter of like not doing the dishes every night. So the issue is the dishes are not being done. It's not versus, hey, you don't do dishes, I don't do dishes. It's just the main issue is the dishes are still sitting there at the end of the night. How are you and I going to work together to make sure that is done? So like it's versus, it's not you against me. It's more like it's us against the issue.
You mean I can't say like, hey, you're sloppy. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Because I actually did that like when we were in our leadership roles, I used to do with my team. Like I would always go with the mindset like, hey, this is the issue. I want you and I to work together on how we can make this work as a team versus I'm just not going to tell you what to do and you tell me what's going on with you. I want to make sure we resolve it together. I've always kind of done with my wife. I know she does get irritated at times because she just wants to vent and just tell me, you're a slob, you need to do it. But I'm always like, okay, the issue is I'm a slob. Let's work on it together. And she's like, no, you're not.
No, you're just a slob.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's so true. And what I love that Jay did, and I felt like he was speaking to me, calling me out when he has a script in the book, everyone, where he says, this is probably what you're saying, and this is a different form of how you can say it. And I think that was the most eye-opening thing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, he's in my head calling me out for how I'm saying all of this, like the you statements, all of that. And I just love that perspective. It is so simple in understanding, but so hard in practice.
I also felt very seen reading that. The other thing I want to be vulnerable about is you shared about work. We used to work in a corporate role. And I actually did come across something very similar to this. I won't mention the book, but it came off more of a disingenuous type of communication. It was almost like tricking someone to get something done for you. And the Jay just kind of wraps it up for us. It's like, it's not about tricking. It's not about deceiving. It's having a really genuine, honest conversation where you're showing love for the other person and respect for the other person. And you're not attacking them. You're not coming from a space of ego. You can both win together.
Yes. And that's when you asked about like, what do I reference back the most? Number 2 actually would be like, you're on the same team. I mean, even last night, we're putting the kids down to bed and like there's dishes everywhere and I'm bathing the kids. And I'm like, oh, why can't you help just clean up dinner? And I'm like, okay. Solution is we need the table clear, right? But it's hard. It takes some muscle memory practice.
It is, yes. And so, that leads into something that I really took away from this book is when he started to talk about impressions, right? So impressions are concepts, ideas that, we subconsciously get from growing up or just ideas that we stick with that don't really have any necessary data or facts to back it up, right? So our idea of love is typically what we either see from our parents or what we refer to in like Disney movies, happily ever after, right? Like those are impressions that have been with us forever. And so we stick to that. And what Jay does is he challenges us to look and reflect at the impressions that no longer serve us and try to make our own impressions. And what you just said earlier about thinking of what you wanted to tell your husband, one of the problems I've always had, even growing up, is that I don't communicate. Like I don't tell others what I want. I just expect people to know what I want. And then when they don't, I get upset.
Yes.
But it's crazy because I've always been this way. And I even remember as a child, my grandma used to tell me in Vietnamese, she would always say, words don't cost anything. You don't have to pay to talk. You tell us, what it is that you need instead of getting upset. I've always known it, but it wasn't until I read this book that it really clicked with me. And it was, I get to control the impressions that I have. And I get to say, hey, just because I grew up thinking that my partner should know what I want, just because he loves me doesn't mean that he can read my mind, because I just assumed that, right? Like, I was like, if you want me,
Absolutely.
you know what I want, but that's not the case. No one knows what you want. So, being able to change my impression around that and then communicate a little bit more, that's really, really helped me.
Oh, that's huge, right? To pull out that communication side and like you said, you were able to then shift that perspective of what that impression is. And I found with that section of the book, it really struck a chord within my people-pleasing tendencies. And my impression was always to be okay and to make things okay and, you know, just kind of brush everything under and serve and overserve. And when he was talking about that, that's really what bubbled up for me in seeing also how that affects my relationship, not just with my spouse, but within my circle as well. And having to retool those impressions of what just healthy relationships in general mean to me.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you guys think about impressions? I know we grew up, you know, always grew up in an age where social media was not very prominent. We grew up in movies, it's fantasy land, and a lot of that, and a lot of stories were told. Like, how do you think that it's going to be different for our kids? Like, as they grow up into a social media, I think love will be defined a little differently for them versus how we grew up in terms of impressions being sent upon us. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think now more than ever, that's why I think Jay's book is so timely, is to have a conversation of love is so much more needed and profound nowadays than ever before, because you get confusing images on love served to you all day long, right? And that's not real love, right? That's that instantaneous dopamine hit of what you think is love. And that's what Jay goes into, especially when he's talking about defining love and he goes through the different steps of what love looks like. I think education in love is going to be key kind of for future kids and community.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that with this book, Jay reminds us that yes, we may see love in different ways around us, but we also have to remember that the definition is going to still continuously be different for everyone. Mm-hmm. That's why it's very important to verbalize that. And the first part of the book, which is so core for everything, is that you have to learn to have solitude with yourself. You have to learn to be comfortable with yourself and love yourself first and foremost before you can even find love elsewhere.
I think that's where a lot of relationships start off in the wrong foot, is because people are being to rid of their loneliness and their, you know, quiet life. And so they just grab onto the first person that gives them attention. And it may not be the right person for them, may or may not, but it's the wrong reason. Like he said in the book, it's the wrong reason to get into a relationship, because you're just kind of setting up where you're going to need that person to always provide you some sort of attention so you don't feel lonely or quiet all the time. And I think that's why I'm glad he started the book off with that, because it is so important to realize solitude versus loneliness. I think that was when I read that, I was telling you, like, I read that chapter twice because I was like, that spoke to me the most. I know I just started the book and I was like, wow, this is also a right start, because I was feeling a little lonely. And in terms of, like, when you're doing entrepreneurship, you do feel lonely at times.
Yeah.
It's more about, like, I should accept the solitude. It is quiet. It's nice, and it's the time needed to be in that zone where you can get your work done. I was confusing that with, I feel lonely because there was no simulation happening. So I appreciate that, because I think that was a big thing for me at the start of the book.
I do too, because I think stillness is by far the toughest thing for me. I am constantly making my life busy, so I feel like there's something always going on. And when I read that chapter, it was really hard for me to swallow that and understand how to practice that, right? Because it's not just understanding that what solitude is, but how do you actually implement that when you are someone that feels that loneliness is just being by yourself with your thoughts, and turning the table on that conversation with yourself internally. And honestly, I think that's the hardest thing for me. It's extremely difficult to be just self and comfortable with just me.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, and what I love that you were touching on when you were talking about finding fulfillment through other people, right? And finding them being able to be like, okay, I am needed, I'm wanted. It touches on that theme that he talks about in his book of the gaps that we have growing up, and how for all of you listening, it's these parent gaps that your parents serve you in so many beautiful ways. And then there are areas that are also underserved. And we look to others to fill those areas that were not fulfilled during, pivotal times in our development and growth. And when you're saying about that, I think it's because, like with my parents in specific, we always were busy. We always had things to do. We never were just sitting and having a quiet moment. It was always filled with activity. And I saw that as like an exciting life, but now I also understand the disservice of that in just understanding at the core who I am and having the time to do that.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because he mentions in the book that like you said, his parents didn't attend all of his rugby practices, so he would seek out his friends as a way of saying, hey, like, look how cool I am, look, I'm in rugby, and like as a way to get their approval. And I think you kind of imprint that upon your partner as well, because especially now, I think with today's world, you are on like always getting attention, whether it's from social media and everything. And I think now we expect that from our partners too, because you want like. If me and my wife are just sitting there and we stop running out of things to say to each other, we just pull up our phone and just sit there the whole time, and we'll just send each other TikTok. We're not even talking. We're just sending each other Instagram reels and TikTok. And I was like, we're communicating, but it's not the same as it was once before, right? And it's that attention that you get from not having that. So, yeah,
it's so true. And you touch on that point that he talks about in the book that I think is one of my favorite kind of nuggets hidden in there. And it's how to build that reconnection with your partner. Like, don't just throw your hands up and feel like we're not communicating, so this isn't working, so I'm out. I really appreciated him walking through how to reconnect on different levels and really give it that opportunity to, like you said, bring that spark back, because it changes. And he talks about that. But I really appreciate how much effort he puts into how to get that flame flaring again, really.
Yeah, he talks, I love it because I'm very like woo woo, and he talks about your energy. See, when you have like conversations about the weather or the day, then that's like a low surface level. But when you get into talking about more about each other, learning about each other, experiencing things together, then you're at that high frequency, and that's how you build that connection, because high frequency gets you excited, gets you amped up, whereas low frequency, you're kind of just like meh, and that's when you kind of lose the spark, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely connected with that part, and I can't even tell you like everything about this book. I was like, T, where were you at? Did you
oh my gosh, I know.
Yeah.
I know, because there's so many elements, and I think that's the wonder. It's a really good book when there are so many different topics you can bounce around from, and you walk away just feeling like fully prepared to understand and receive and also give love in the best way possible.
Yes.
And that's what I think the difference is between this book and Think Like a Monk. He touches on his personal story in this book, but you really have such actionable tools, even like we talked about scripts in this book, that you can literally go back to and be like, okay, how should I talk to my husband about this?
Right. Even like I think for dating, right? He says like he has 3 dates, and each day has a different objective.
Different questions,
that way you can kind of see what your emotional states would be like in given certain situations and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was really cool, because I think it is very much for everyone trying in their different phases of love, pretty much, right? If you're starting off, or if you're going through a breakup, whatever it might be, it's all there for everyone. And so when I put the book down, I would read one chapter and I'll put the book away, because I have to just process everything I just read for like at least a day or two, and just say, okay, that's what I read. Because I can't just read it from front to back for me, because there's so many good insights that he provides that I don't think I'd gotten it if I had just read the whole thing in one sitting or 2 sittings. I had to just read a chapter and go, okay, I read that one chapter. Let me think about what just happened, and then kind of process.
I'm such the opposite. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know more. Oh my gosh. So
Like,
great.
tell me everything. Tell me everything.
Yeah.
You guys know how much better of a human being I would have been in my early 20s had I read the breakup script and done it correctly out of this book.
And how much better our world would be if everyone read this book
Mhm.
because once you get through the first part of the book, that's about yourself. You learn to love yourself. Then you get to the middle part, it's learning to love your partner the right way, and not just your partner, because it also works with everyone in your circle, your family, your friends, everyone. You can apply the same tactics to that. But the third part of the book, I think, is probably the most important of all, is that we learn that love is not just love with your partner. That's merely just a stepping stone to something even greater and life-changing, right? It's loving everyone in this world, and it's loving strangers by smiling at them and showing love in ways that can create more love amongst the world, because as we all know, there's a lot of bad stuff in the news these days.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes we get so caught up because we're all behind screens all day too, right? And when we get out into the real world, we kind of forget how to have that loving connection, even like you said, with a stranger or with our coworkers and over Zoom, or what those little things are that we can just bring joy, even if it's not given back, but we have the tools to be able to at least give it out and hope that it spreads from there.
Yeah.
True.
Now, I have to ask, did either of you write a love letter to yourself or partner from this book?
Not.
No, I did not,
You
but
journaled.
I mean, I do journal every morning, but what I will say is I do actually like the one that he provides, and I just kind of use that as my own, which he says is totally fine to do. So I'm like, just a screenshot of it. I'm like, I'm just gonna read this every day to myself because it's so much better than what I would have written myself. I would have been like, yeah, you're tall and you're okay at sports. Great, that's it. That's all I would get to myself.
I've been mulling over it. I haven't actually sat down, but I've been thinking in my head what I would want to write down.
Have you?
Same. No, because I'm with you. Like when I thought about it, I kind of got a little scared of it because I'm like, wow, I didn't realize like how raw this exercise is actually going to be.
Right.
And it's almost like I have a fear of everybody. I know no one's seen it, but we're always the harshest critic on what we produce. So I'm with you. That's what I love that script. And I love that he includes meditation throughout the book as well to help kind of bring it back to, like you said, it's part of that woo-woo side, but I love it because it brings back just kind of a focus on what the actually core is of his message. And if you don't retain anything from that chapter, remembering these 4 lines in this, manifestation can make the whole difference in your life too.
Should we bring that up? What are the 4 lines?
Yes, let me see. I should have earmarked it. Of course, this is where, having that.
We look for that. So, overall, I absolutely just loved this book, and I wish that everyone should read it. But I do think, Paige, you bring a good point that younger readers, young adults should also get into this book, especially maybe even as they're entering high school. It may be above their head, but it may be right what they need as they're going through these confusing times in their life, and crushes and love and all of that stuff, to help them who they are and what their values are, and really define what it is that they want in their lives.
I think you hit the nail on the head. The value, like understanding our own value in a relationship. If you can learn that as early as you learn like financial readiness, you are going to be the most successfully readied person ever, because you're going to understand that you don't need to give your worth away and spend years of heartbreak and agony through that, which we've all been through. But at least it helps he really shows you how to work through those without feeling so lost and spending like a year of having heartbreak over a lost relationship that wasn't serving you in the first place.
Yeah. I love the steps for if you were the dumpy or the dumper. Very clear.
Okay. And I also loved his monkey and banana analogy, where the monkey and alligator, where so everybody listening, he's got some great analogies and metaphors throughout the book as well. But there is one about this very tricky monkey and alligator that you're going to have to go and read. But it is all about, like you said, the trickery not being the core of it, right? But the smarts and having the know-it-all to be able to know exactly what you're doing and purposefully doing it. And so I love those little anecdotes that he weaves throughout the book too. I'm finding these 4 sentences, and watch me find them like after our time, because I literally read them all the time. It's like, this is so, it's at one of the ends of the, you know how each every chapter ends with kind of a nice try this summary at the end of each chapter. So you guys listening, it's great because it gives you, that's where you get to put what you read into practice.
If you go to 269, there's also meditation.
279, and here, I think it's he does a self-gratitude meditation on page 73. And it's not 4 lines. It's like, okay, but he talks you exactly through like how to set up a meditation if you've never done it, and how to experience that piece in knowing your whole self too. And that's what I really like, is this can be for beginners, or if you're like, I don't meditate, it's not for me, you can skip over that chapter, right? It's like he puts it in very purposeful chunks with the book too. So
good, Paige, good.
No, go.
No, I say, I think meditation, I highly recommend all of our listeners and remote watchers to definitely try it. Like, I know I was somebody who can't shut off their mind, but I found a really cool app where literally, like, it'll even tell you if you can't sit still for even 5 minutes, just listen to it while you're in the car. It could be an active meditation where you're just listening to things come to you in a way. And I think it's a great way to just get started. But Jay is very big about meditation. There's a lot of it in his other book as well. So I think it's very important because it does help with that it does help center you a little bit, and also does bring in the self-love, because you start to reflect on a lot of things. And I know for me, it also helps me kind of like center myself where I am currently versus always in the future. My mind's always in the future.
It's a good way to get into solitude as well. If you're not
Exactly, it is, because I'm like you. My mind's always racing, and I first did that self-guided one because, like you, I use an app because I need someone to tell me like the practice. That's what I think Jay does so well. He gets in your head and literally it's telling you step by step what to do, and it's not just fluff. It's actual proof. And he talks a lot. I think what I love also is he brings so much of his client work into his book. So he shares stories of his clients and how they have used these practices to change different relationships in their lives. So you get to truly like learn firsthand on people he's worked with. And I love a book that has like great research a part of it.
Yeah, it makes it feel more like real. Like, you know, there's the real world examples of it out there, and it's not just him preaching something. It's like, hey, I've had somebody deal with it before, and I know what it's like, and this is how they did it. And it just kind of adds to the whole book, and overall, that it truly is there to help you. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
It has all of the woo-woo ancient Hinduism side to it, but then it also has all the data, the research, things like that for
East
people like you.
It is. That's a great way to summarize. It is East and West combined. It's bringing in the best of both sides into just a very clear understanding of love. So, like you said, whether you're like, I love research and there's tons of, studies he includes, or you love like understanding the vibrations and frequency, that's a part of it too. I know when we were talking about it today, I picked it up again because I read it about 2 weeks ago, and I just get excited for new nuggets that come each time reading it too.
Yeah, it's a great book. So I also wanted to ask you, Paige, so when you had reached out to us and you gave me the list of the books, this was one of them. Can you share with our listeners like the capacity of work that you have with this book, with Jay, with the books that you represent? Like, what is the work that you do?
Yeah. So as a book publicist, and I did not do the full his book publicity campaign for this one. Mainly what we do for our authors is the full publicity campaign. So that means we come on and we start with them 6 months to 4 months before their launch, and we really help get them interviews, exposure, and storytelling. Kind of we're masters at storytelling. And we work with them in getting on from podcasts to national TV shows to interviews in magazines. That's really kind of our sweet spot, is taking them through pre-sale and then through launch, because like this book has the capacity to be like Atomic Habits, where it is referenced year after year and continues to sit at the best-selling chart. That's the sign of a really amazing book that withstands years after pub date, not just a successful launch and then you kind of don't hear about it again. So our job is to make the book be a long-term, like in the history book type of book. And so that's where, like I said, I'm a human connector. We help them understand what their pitch angles are, how to pitch the media, what to like, especially for new authors. They don't understand what their rights are when in working with a publisher and what to ask for. And self-published authors don't know kind of where to begin getting their foot in the door with media. And so I just love educating and teaching authors on how they can get the most exposure, but also make the most impact. It's not about just selling the most amount of books. Yes, Jay Shetty wants to be a bestseller and sell thousands of books. More importantly, he wants his message to have an impact and a long-lasting impact. And those are the authors that we love to work with.
If you are a new author and you, like I said, like what is the plan that you have for them? I know it's 4 to 6 months out. You reach out to them. Is there like a specific, like do you help set up their social media pages, or do you kind of help them just say, hey, you should set one up and here's how you can do it. Here's what you should post. Like, what does the day-to-day look like for you in terms of helping them get to that level where they feel comfortable and they can spread their message to the readers?
Yep, it's all a part of it. So we help build out the entire strategy from social, from your own profiles to working with influencers, because book talk is the number one generator of book sales. And it even starting now to be for nonfiction. Book talk got super popular in the fiction category, but now it's having such a cross influence into all categories. So understanding how to work with influencers and how to use your website real estate to drive book sales. Then we help on the media side, we craft the pitch angles. We help create kind of the curated list, because if your book, like Jay Shetty's book, I'm not going to go and pitch it to like Fox News, right? Like that just doesn't like necessarily fit, but I would, right? But I would pitch it to like Oprah Daily, O Magazine, Good Morning America. So you really have to be purposeful on who you're talking to and why you're talking to them. And we help craft those lists and that messaging for those lists. And then that includes podcasts, because podcasts, like I said, are a huge driver for campaigns and crafting the messaging and landing podcast opportunities. Also, a big thing that authors forget are bylined opportunities, where you write articles for different publications. That is amazing for SEO, for your name in your book, also for brand proof. And so a killer byline strategy can make all the difference in your book launch success, but your overall personal brand success too. So I like to say we're an incubator of like traditional, digital, and new media, and pulling all those levers to get to your target audience and with the right mix of media.
So because we actually do have quite a few following that are self-published authors, going to be self-publishing soon. And being the first time, they're really kind of lost on all of this, and everything that you're saying sounds great, but I would imagine that a first-time author would be a bit hesitant, whether it be budget, whether it be, like, do I need to do this? Maybe I don't need it right now. How can you explain it in a way that it would be worth the investment to do this?
Absolutely. Well, the beautiful thing is we do have a community that's a great way for self-published authors to be a part of it. But because it's kind of getting your feet wet, understanding the need for it. But why I would so strongly say you need PR marketing to move your book is because there are now 4 million books every year. And to have your book noticed in the media marketplace is a very small percentage. And the only people who are getting those placements are the ones that know how to market and get media for their books. So knowledge is the difference between your book being a nice decoration on the shelf to having your book actually make a difference in the world. And so that is why it's critical to understand the power of all of these communities that need to be pulled in order for your book to be, whether you want it to be an Amazon bestseller, whether you want it to be used for speaking opportunities, you've got to have the knowledge in knowing how to market and how to get attention for your book to reach any goal that you set out for the greater purpose of what you're hoping to grow into.
Yeah, I was listening to a couple of your other podcasts as well, and you mentioned something that I don't think a lot of authors really think about is once you launch your book, right, you still have to have that same momentum for at least a year out. It's not launch and then done, right? There's still so much more work that needs to be done once the book is out.
It's so true. And that's where we kind of differ as well, is because we set up for the whole year plus after. And then from that point, you're going to be, because here's the thing, yes, you're going to make a splash when your book comes on the market, but you want this to be a continuous steady growth up, especially if you are looking to use this book to lead to other opportunities. You want a consistent basis of your book being spoken about and talked about on different platforms for them to be able to go and reference like new and notable interviews, previous speaking opportunities, whatever that is, because so many times I see authors let their gas off the pedal and then they're like, well, my book's not moving. And it's because you just let that momentum die.
For all of our listeners, if anyone is publishing a book or thinking about it or want to learn more, how can they reach you, Paige?
Okay, the best way to reach me is I will share out my email, but just send me a DM on Instagram at the Paige Dungan, and I will connect and we'll find a quick time to meet and chat and go from there. That's probably the easiest way, or visit our website, thefrontporchcollective.co.
Wonderful. Well, Paige, it was so great to have you on.
This was so much fun.
Absolutely. It was great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on this book, talking to us about the book world. I'm sure you're helping out a lot of new authors, and hopefully we can connect with you soon on other books that are coming out. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening with us. And if you have not read 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty, this is your sign. Grab your copy of your book in the link in our bio video below. And if you're writing your own book, reach out to Paige or give us a call and let's work together. Let's get your stories out there, you guys. Thanks for vibing with Eat, Read, Sleep. Bye.
Bye, guys.